Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And it's great to be back in Norwich. And can I say thank you to all of you for breaking off from campaigning right at this last moment in the campaign to come here today. Because I just wanted to say a few things to you, because this is a really crucial election. I think it's the most critical election the country has faced in my lifetime. And I know what hard work you've all been doing throughout the campaign, and it's less than 36 hours now before the polls close, so let's make the most of that time right up to the time that the polls close. Now, you know, being in government, serving in government, is a huge honour, but it's also a great responsibility. And I think at no time has that responsibility been greater than it is now, because our country is facing great challenges, but also huge opportunities are opening up to us. And as we go out campaigning in this remaining time, I want us to take out the message to people of the clear choice that is there for them when they vote tomorrow, and the message of the vision that we as Conservatives have for building a stronger, fairer and more prosperous Britain than it is today. And it is only the Conservatives that have the plan and the vision and the determination to do that. And I am absolutely confident that we can do that, because I believe in Britain and I believe in the British people. And I want to see us building a country where nobody and no community is left behind. I want to see us building a country where it doesn't matter where you came from or who your parents are. Actually, how far you go is down to you and your hard work. I want to see a country, as we leave the European Union, we do see opportunities opening up to us. And I think the promise of Brexit is great. I want to see us as a global, outward-looking nation. I want to see us out there trading our way around the world. I want to ensure that economic prosperity and opportunity is spread across the whole country. I want to ensure that this is a country that feels more confident in itself. And as I say, I believe in Britain and in the British people. And that is the message that we will take out in these remaining hours. Because, you know, there are great things that we can do together. And I want us to reignite the British spirit, to show the opportunities and what we can be as a country. Now, when it comes to the election tomorrow, I think the choices that, and the questions that people need to ask are exactly the same today as they were right at the beginning of the campaign. And the first is a question of who do they trust? Who do you trust to actually have the strong and stable leadership that is going to deliver the best deal for Britain in Europe? Because Brexit matters. Brexit is the basis of everything else. We need to get that Brexit deal right. And another question is, who has got the will and, crucially, the plan to just get on with the job and deliver Brexit? And remember, those Brexit negotiations start 11 days after polling day tomorrow. So in less than a fortnight, the Prime Minister and the government have to be ready to go out there and negotiate for Britain and stand up and fight for Britain. And there's one simple fact that nobody should forget, which is that if we lose just 6 seats, the government loses its majority. And that would mean that coalition of chaos with Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP. It would mean Jeremy Corbyn in number 10, John McDonnell at the Treasury. And what a combination that would be. We know they would wreck our economy. And what we also know with Labour is that it's ordinary working people who always pay the price. And in that coalition of chaos, of course, there's a third element. We'd see the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon pulling the strings. So we can prevent that from happening. Every vote for Conservative candidates here and around the country can prevent that from happening. Every vote for Conservative candidates will strengthen my hand in those Brexit negotiations. And every vote for Conservative candidates is a vote to build that better, brighter future for our country. So let's go out there with renewed determination over these last hours. Let's put every effort into that campaigning. Let's go out there, not for ourselves, but for the future of our country. And I have a very simple message to people. Vote Conservative in the national interest. Give me your backing to lead Britain. Give me the authority to speak for Britain. Strengthen my hand when I negotiate for Britain. And with your backing, I will deliver for Britain. Thank you. Now we have some members of the media here. Andy.
Thank you, Prime Minister. When you called this election, a lot of people were talking about a landslide. No one's talking about that anymore. Isn't the reason for that the campaign that you've led? It's been a disappointment, hasn't it?
There is only one poll that matters. I've never talked about predicting the result of an election. I never do that. I say there's one simple thing you need to do in an election, which is just go out there and work to earn the support of voters. That's exactly what I've been doing. It's what Chloe and Lana have been doing. It's what candidates all around have been doing. It's what all these activists have been doing. So the only poll that matters is the one that takes place tomorrow. Ben.
Thank you. Ben Wright from the BBC. Prime Minister, throughout this campaign, you've said that you have a plan for Brexit. But after 6-7 weeks, voters are no clearer to knowing how you plan to pull Britain out of the single market, what bill you might pay Brussels, what the consequence of you failing would be. You haven't given voters a clear choice on Brexit at all, have you?
Yes, I have. Can I just point out that I gave a speech back in January where I set out the negotiating objectives for Brexit. We've repeated those. We've set those out clearly in our manifesto. In the Article 50 letter, triggering the start of the negotiations, I set out clearly objectives that we've got: a comprehensive free trade agreement, a deep and special partnership with the EU in the future. We believe it's right that the EU remains strong, continuing to cooperate on security and defence matters. And there are other, 12 objectives that I've set out for the Brexit negotiations. I've been very clear what our plan for Brexit is. Jeremy Corbyn's had, I think, 7 Brexit plans in 9 months. When you're going into those negotiations, you need to know what you want and you need to know what how you're going to go about it, and we do. Right. Robert?
Prime Minister Robert Nisbet, Sky News. After the 7/7 bombings, the Conservatives accused the Labour government of a knee-jerk response. Aren't you doing exactly the same by warning of tightening human rights legislation?
No, what I've set out is very clear. We are seeing the terrorist threat changing. We are seeing it evolve, and we need to respond to that. And as I said on the steps of Downing Street, enough is enough, and things have to change. And that's why I've said I believe we do need to do more to tackle the ideology that is motivating the perpetrators of these attacks. We do need to have those international agreements to regulate cyberspace so that terrorists cannot plan online. I think we need to do more to stamp out extremism here in communities in Britain. And yes, we do need to look at the powers for the police and security intelligence agencies to make sure that as the threat evolves, they have the powers that they need. And I've talked about some of those powers, like making it easier to deport foreign terrorist suspects, being able to do more to restrict the freedom and movements of terror suspects when we know they are a threat, but when we're not able to, we don't have the evidence to prosecute them fully in court. And longer sentences for terrorism-related offences, for those who are convicted of terrorism-related offences. And what I've been clear about is that if human rights laws gets in the way of us doing those things, which I think are necessary as the threat has evolved, then we will change those laws. Yes.
William James from Reuters. Prime Minister, how would any of the measures on human rights and counter-terrorism that you've announced in the last 24 hours have prevented the last 3 terrorist attacks in the UK? In those cases, all the suspects were already known to MI5 and the security services.
What I'm talking about is how we adapt to a threat that is evolving. What we've seen, sadly, in this country in the last 3 months is 3 terrorist attacks. We've also seen 5 attacks foiled by the police and the security services. So the tempo has increased. We're seeing terrorism breeding terrorism, and we're seeing the type of attack in terms of the crude methods used. So the threat is evolving. We need to adapt our response to that. I've been very, very much, obviously as Home Secretary, I was clear that when the police and security services wanted the laws and powers to be able to enable them to do their job, that we gave them to them. We've given the police new powers. We've set in major legislation, the powers for the security services and the police. But now that the threat is becoming more complex and evolving, we need to look at adapting our response to make sure they have the powers that they need. Yes.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thank you. Steve Hawkes at The Sun. There may be scores of Labour voters who can't bear to vote for Jeremy Corbyn tomorrow, but they're not quite sure about backing the Conservatives just yet, perhaps for the first time in their lives. What message can you give to them about how, away from Brexit, you will change their lives for the better over the next 5 years?
Well, yes, I mean, I would say to people it's not a question of how they voted before. It's a question of who they want to see taking this country through not just the next 5 years, but setting the direction of this country for the future. And I would say to those voters that I think many of them will be people, the sort of people I met when I stood, for example, up in northwest Durham some years ago. People who are fiercely patriotic, who are very proud of their part of the country, who want to see good jobs for their children, who want their children to get a good quality of education, who want the public services to be there to support them when they need it. And it's the Conservative Party, because we will build that strong economy that will see more jobs, that will see better paid jobs. We will be on people's side. We will help them with the cost of living through capping those rip-off energy tariffs. But through developing that strong economy, through growing our economy, we can ensure we can invest in the NHS, we can provide a good school place for every child, and crucially, we'll also provide proper technical education for young people for the first time in this country. Yeah, precisely. Yes, sorry.
Prime Minister Henry Zeffman from The Times. In 2011, as Home Secretary, you scrapped control orders and replaced them with less restrictive powers over terrorist suspects. Now you want to beef powers back up again. Isn't this just another U-turn?
No, the reason we did what we did with control orders was because the courts were increasingly knocking those control orders down. So we did introduce the TPIMs, and we have subsequently enhanced the TPIMs. As I said earlier, now that we're seeing the threat evolving, becoming more complex, it's right that we look again at what powers are needed in order to be able to ensure that the police and security services have what they need. I'll take a couple more. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. No, the gentleman just in front of the lamp here, yes, with the beard.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Mesa Hall from the Daily Express.
Sorry, Mesa. Yes.
You've talked today about reigniting the spirit of the British people. Have you now come to the conclusion that it was our membership of the European Union that stuffed it out?
No. What I think is that there is a real opportunity for us now as coming together as the United Kingdom, grasping those opportunities that are available to us as we come out of the European Union. But to do that, we have to have that spirit of optimism and of getting out across the world, of trading across the world, of encouraging investment here, of seeing more jobs coming here, and ensuring there is opportunity for everybody. As I said, it's about ensuring that people know that it's not about where they come from, but it's actually about them and their hard work that will get them on in life. I think that's so important. Well, I'll take Emily.
Emily Morgan from ITV News. Prime Minister, you said you wouldn't make policy up on the hoof, but isn't that exactly what you did last night in a desperate attempt to persuade voters that you are tough on terror? And if I may, you've had your ups and downs over the last few weeks. What would you say that you've learnt about yourself during this campaign?
I would say what I know from this campaign, but what I've always known about myself is that when it comes to campaigns, I like to get out and about and meet voters. It's what I've always done through election campaigns throughout my entire political career. And what I am doing is setting out for people, as we've seen a change in the threat, as we've seen that greater complexity, that great higher tempo, the steps that we will take. But many of these are not things that have suddenly come onto the page book. I've been talking about some of these issues before. I've talked about deporting foreign terror suspects. I had quite a job making sure that we got one certain hate preacher, Abu Qatada, out of the country. But I did it. Now, there are more. I will just now take a couple more. Right at the back, so I can't see all the faces when. Yes. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, hello, Owen Bennett from Huffington Post. You've appeared at a lot of events like this with activists. Jeremy Corbyn is attracting thousands upon thousands of people to rallies. Does that worry you at all?
No, I've done all sorts of events. I've been into workplaces and actually talked to people in their workplace about the issues that matter to them and taken their questions. And yes, I'm here with activists today, but this is the last stages of the campaign, and as you heard, I'm encouraging everybody to get out over the next 36 hours and get those votes out tomorrow. And I'll take, Quentin, my last question, why not?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can you please promise Brenda from Bristol and also the nation's beleaguered sketch writers that there would not be another general election, another referendum for the next 5 years?
I mean, when I called the election, I said that it was because I was concerned that the other parties wanted to frustrate the Brexit negotiations, but also that the country needed that stability over the 5 years. And on the question of a referendum, I can assure you we're the one party that is going to deliver on the will of the British people, respect the will of the British people, ensure we come out of Brexit, and there's no second referendums, unlike other parties. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.